today. And today my guest is Hilary Cooke. Hilary, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you, Lynn.
Yeah. Hilary, you've been here before and given us a synopsis of your life, so we might not have to go quite there again. And you and I ran for the Senate
Yes, we did.
from the county, and we had a good time doing that. And we wanted to talk today a little bit about what's going on in Montpelier. And the biggest piece that's going on, well, there's two big pieces, but the biggest piece we want to talk about today is the health care bill. It's called Green Mountain Care, H202, House Bill 202.
S57. Right.
Now it's S57 because it's in the Senate.
That's, well, they name it for both. H202 slash S57.
Yeah. Now, I have downloaded and read this bill and tried to get around it, and my first impression is interesting, but what is your first impression of this bill?
Well, my first impression, I'm for single payer. I'm for universal access in whatever form it takes, but certainly I do see the merit in single payer. But that means it has to work. It has to be based on sound economic values. It has to be within, like any budgeted piece of legislation, it has to be within where they make ends meet. And that's absent in this bill.
Don't you think, knowing that we've talked about single payer for a long time, Richard Davis has been leading the charge, as well as there's a whole group, that they have never squared the corner on how you're going to pay for it.
Right.
That's their biggest stumbling block. And it sounds like that still might be the case.
Yeah, that is the case. I mean, this bill doesn't dance around it. I think it really, by design, avoids it. How it's going to be paid for, and it does defer that obligation, as far as I can see, to a appointed board. And you know, some of that is okay, but to the extreme that and scope that this bill represents is I mean, we're talking, and this is based on Act 128. This is their numbers, not mine. If everything, Act 128 was, that was last year's bill that enabled Dr. Shao to design the health plan that for a large part is the basis for H202.
Now, I understand this Dr. Shao, he's a Harvard professor or a doctor or something.
Health economist, yes.
Health economist, oh, okay.
That's right.
And his initial presentation, I understand, to the legislature was that you need a population of 1 million people to make it even begin to work, to have that much of a thing. And we only have 600,000, so right away, to me, a red flag goes up.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of concern about the numbers. I think 600,000 people is sufficient number to make any kind of universal access to healthcare system work. It's not in the numbers of the population, it's in the quality of the population that really drives a successful healthcare plan, whether it's 1,000 people or 600,000 people.
What criteria are in the quality that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the quality of a healthcare population, we're talking about things that certainly preventive care is part of that, but even more so nutrition and exercise and things that even are before a preventive care regimen.
So you're talking about healthy lifestyle.
That's right. Ownership of one's own choices that people make about lifestyle.
And do you think that Vermont, where does Vermont fit, not in your opinion, but in how insurance actuaries look at a population? How does Vermont fit in there? Are we superior in our health?
Typically, I think Vermont, compared to the other 49, yes, we are successful. For the most part, plans that have a large group population are going to have better health risks in their employee population than a plan that is, well, in this case, for instance, comparing it to the small group health insurance market, there's not the incentives to have to encourage or incent healthy lifestyles like there is with large group employer populations.
So a large group has more ability to influence people to live healthy than a small
right.
group.
But typically that is correct.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
You would think a small group would be more inclusive.
Well,
as far as you have to be basically maybe a non-smoker, a moderate to non-drinker. You have to exercise so many times a week. You have to prove that you can do these things in a small group. Or is that not how it works?
no, it's not how it works.
Okay.
When I refer to a small group population, I'm talking about the aggregate in Vermont of all the small groups put together. But there really isn't, in this case, any real coordinated ability to have a coordinated effort to incent people, other than preventive care, which is we're finding is only of marginal utility.
Yeah, it's been touted as a big silver bullet kind of thing.
That's right.
But I think now they're saying that it's not showing promise.
There are studies that peer-reviewed studies that show that it is not as effective as we were not only thinking but hoping it would be. Sure.
This whole health plan strikes me, having read it, as it's putting in place an ideal, a utopia of we're going to take care of everybody. Mm-hmm. And this board you talked about, the power that it has is a soup to nuts kind of power. They're going to recruit doctors and train them, and nurses and train them. They're going to help each of us select our own, what's the best policy for us. They're going to manage the hospitals, negotiate with drug prices with companies. It's a board of 5 people, remember? The scope of powers is, they're also going to decide what they're going to pay for and how much they're going to pay for it, and basically maybe do bulk orderings with all the hospitals in the state. I don't know how that's going to work. But that kind of oversight always, it's sort of a progressive idea that a small group of people can make all these big decisions, and yet they somehow always seem to leave things out.
Right.
Because it's almost a philosophy against whether you have a centralized power with total control over the society, or you have individuals making their own decisions.
Mm-hmm. I'm always up for ideals, and I'm always think that we ought to reach for the sky and try to achieve the most we can. But let's take health out of this for a second.
Okay.
This bill, if I had been elected to the state senate and a bill of certainly of this size, but pretty much any kind of legislation, I want to know how much it's going to cost, because in the broad scope of things, when something certainly this massive is introduced, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers in the overall budget of the state of Vermont for 2011 or 2012, whenever. There's going to be winners and losers, and to have our legislators
choose.
Choose is what they're supposed to do, but in fact not choose is, I don't think, what they're supposed to do. They're the ones we have put into office to make these very difficult decisions and to kick the can down the road
To the board.
To the board who is appointed, to me, is an abdication of their responsibilities and duties. And if I had been elected, whether it's healthcare or whether it's transportation or whatever the issue is, I just in good conscience could not vote for something that I didn't know what the cost was going to be. or have, or at least I certainly wouldn't avoid trying the responsibility of demanding that we know what the costs
Well,
are.
the legislature's following a pattern they started 2 years ago when the state started accumulating, the economy started going sour. They accumulated this debt, and they did not make the cuts themselves. They asked agencies to make the cuts and choose where they could best cut. So this has sort of been an established mode, and so now they have said, what you're saying is this board is going to be in charge of making decisions on what things are covered, what aren't, how much they're going to pay for them, and the legislature will have clean hands.
Yeah, it sure is a tidy way of doing things. Remember, Lynn, this is the same team that 2 years ago overrode a governor's budget and veto and added 25 million to a budget only to have to take it back the start of the session following. If there was ever a bill that required fiscal restraint, fiscal discipline,
and even knowledge. How many? They don't have to even know what's going on.
This is it. Yeah, and again, I want to see single payer work, but unless you take command of the costs, unless you take command of the legislation, I don't see how it can succeed. This is the part that concerns me the most, and really is, I'm astonished.
Mm-hmm. Well, another piece of astonishment to add to it, these cost things, is the pay part thing. Who's going to pay for it, and how is it going to be paid for it? Because the costs undoubtedly, I think, are going to go up. Because this is going to be a huge expansion of state government, which is going to be huge increased people on the payroll to make all this thing work, just administratively. And to keep tabs on all of us, because there's criteria we have to meet. You have to have your health care must be received in a satisfactory way, in a timely way, and you have to be very happy with how you've been treated, the whole thing. And they're going to keep track of all this stuff, which means that's people to keep track of it.
They're going to hire 10 or 12 people from Vishka to come over to work as staff for the board.
Is Vishka what?
And
what's Vishka?
Vishka is the Department of Banking, Insurance, Securities, and Healthcare Administration. And one of the tenets of this bill, or one of the goals of this bill, is that they will also be managing the Medicare population, the Medicaid population. They're going to be managing all the population that's currently in private health care. And they're going to do it with 12 people, plus 5 board members. Sure, there's going to be help from contractors like Blue Cross Blue Shield or whoever else they hire to do some of this. But
so we aren't getting rid of the Blue Cross Blue Shield expenses.
Well, we're going. I'm sure they'll be readjusted. But right, there's going to be a need for staff and customer service, that sort of thing. Part of the idea, though, with this is that there's only going to be one plan, 2 plans. There'll be a single payer. There might be a couple rules of pools of risk out there. There might be more than just one, or at least they allow the chance of that happening in this bill. So.
Well,